Number 4, we are seizing the policy opportunity, and we heard this afternoon. 20 years of policy and practice and market innovation has shown us how to use tax and asset policy to invest in ways that not only offer to increase prosperity, but to make us more equal. At the federal level, asset building policies designed to create a comprehensive savings infrastructure and build assets have gained a new momentum, and Michael Bart talked about many of these. President Obama has included an expanded savers credit, asset limit reform, and auto IRAs in both of his budgets, and recommended $50 million for Bank on USA. The Aspire bill to create universal child savings accounts has been reintroduced into Congress with great support. Beginning next year, we will have an important new federal wealth building policy that anyone in America will be able to use part of their federal tax refund to order the quintessential safe savings product, inflation-protected U.S. savings bonds. And this policy has characteristics we've long thought. It's universal, sorry, Melvin, scalable, permanent, and can be used for children and to encourage first-time savers and builds upon the ability to split refunds. As Michael described, the recent passage of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau builds a policy infrastructure to secure a new level of financial protections that are increasingly essential to the financial security of families. And for those of you who are part of the growing network of advocates and practitioners of affordable housing, we are looking at a game-changing policy win of $600 million in financial incentives to replace aging, terribly energy-inefficient manufactured homes with Energy Star units delivered in part through nonprofit housing developers that can change not only the balance sheet, but the profit and loss statement of these families who are on the major unsubsidized source of housing in America. And these are just a few highlights. CFED's recently released Assets and Opportunities Special Report documenting state policy progress since 2009 has shown a net gain, even in the toughest fiscal climate faced by states in years, of 70 policy improvements, resulting in a stronger state asset policy infrastructure compared to last year. It's no surprise that the policies that saw the most success were the ones that were low or no cost. 18 states eliminated asset tests in public benefit programs. Others streamlined, yes. Others streamlined enrollment in children's health insurance programs and regulated consumer lending. Results were much more mixed for programs that required new or significant funding, such as housing trust funds, microenterprise development, and IDAs. But given the fiscal crisis affecting virtually all the states, this progress is a testament not only to the power of strong advocacy, but to the inherent logic and value of an assets approach. And if the states were at the forefront of policy innovation for the past decade, municipalities are catching up quickly with some of the newest approaches to increase financial empowerment. Asset building policies and programs have been embraced by a growing number of cities as an essential part of their efforts to help families with low incomes stabilize their economic lives. Cities have played a leadership role in launching what is now over 70 bank-on campaigns to improve low-income households' access to financial products and services and promote financial literacy, an innovation soon to be supported at the federal level. San Francisco is slated to become the first publicly funded universal match savings program for children when it launches kindergarten to college this fall. Local leaders are also pioneering new ways to innovate and leverage the regulatory power of municipalities to increase consumer protections from predatory financial products. And last, we are learning to leverage the power of markets. We won't reach scale through philanthropy. We won't even get the scale we need by relying on government funding. True scale in building assets and expanding economic security lies in making the business case to bring private sector partners into the game. This usually means crafting financial incentives directed to those who we care about that change the profitability equation for financial institutions. It means aiming less for that perfect boutique product and more for standardized, low-cost, yet accessible and fair products that are easy to use and market. In the end, the only route to achieving sustainability and meaningful scale, and it requires us to think in terms of market penetration as much as social impact, since by increasing our market share, we will have greater impact. So, how do we create a save and invest economy? I have 7 thoughts. First, building on what Tom said, we need to expose and reallocate the federal asset budget, although I have a slightly different equation than you did. You should have in your bags the copy of Upside Down, the $400 billion federal asset budget, released today by CFED and the Annie E. Casey Foundation. This study documents that in 2009, the federal government spent $384 billion, rounding up to $400 billion, to encourage individuals and families to save for retirement, own homes, start businesses, and pursue higher education. While there are some programs that directly target low-income people, most of the resources that we spend is done so through tax incentives. For each $1 in program expenditures, we spend more than $300 in tax expenditures. And as we know, and has been said eloquently earlier today, tax expenditures tend to accrue to the benefit of those with higher income, higher tax liabilities, and a greater ability to itemize. Moreover, the reliance on tax deductions, exclusions, and deferrals over refundable tax credits further skews tax benefits towards the wealthy. So what do we find? In 2009, 53% of the federal asset budget went to the top 5% of taxpayers, those making more than $167,000 a year, while 45% went to the top 1%. Less than 4% of the asset budget benefited the bottom 60% of taxpayers. The top 1% received an average tax benefit of more than $96,000, while taxpayers in the lowest 20% received less than $5, which probably is enough to get a cup of coffee at Starbucks, but probably not with whipped cream. Of course, higher income people pay more taxes, but they get back even more than they pay. In 2009, the top 1% of taxpayers paid 27.7% of all taxes, but collected 45% of asset tax benefits. And we believe, although we don't have the data yet, that the same kind of inequality is at the state level as well, if we did a state asset budget. We have a monumental opportunity, and it was great to hear all the speakers raise this, not only to save by curbing existing ineffective asset tax incentives, but to increase net savings significantly by extending effective incentives to the asset-poor majority. In a world where politics are increasingly shaped by a growing budget deficit, we suggest a strategy where we cut inefficient subsidies to both lower the deficit and pay for higher return investments. We suggest cutting the overall federal asset budget by 25%, from $400 to $300 billion annually. That would reduce the 10-year deficit by $1 trillion, a nice round number. At the same time, we would reallocate about $10 billion a year, so we have a little bit to negotiate, Tom, which is 2.5% of current expenditures, to expand incentives to low and middle income families to save. At the end of 2010, the Bush administration's tax cuts are set to expire, which means that Congress will either extend or eliminate these tax cuts. The inevitable legislation will provide a policy vehicle on which to carry a major investment in wealth-building incentives targeted to lower-income families and to address the racial wealth gap. Last month, the CBO estimated that it would cost $814 billion over the next 10 years to extend the 2001 tax cuts to households earning more than $250,000. Compare that to the $30 billion it would cost to extend the Savers Credit to 50 million low and moderate income households, the $4 billion required to implement the IDA tax credit, the $10 billion for the auto IRA, or the $35 billion that it would cost to provide a child savings account to every child at birth for 10 years. Where is the better return on investment? If we take all 4 of these initiatives and divide them by 10, it would cost about $8 billion a year, meaning that we can enact a comprehensive wealth-building system for children and families for 2% of the federal asset building budget.